Welcome to SEC Football Live, brought to you by ML Rose. I am Braden Gall. That is Anwar Richardson covering the Texas Longhorns for OrangeBloods.com. And Anwar, thank you so much for giving us some time today. We do appreciate it. How are you, sir?
Man, I'm doing great, man. I'm living in Austin. I can think of worse things and worse places to be, So it's summertime. The only bad thing I got going on is I got kids that I gotta keep occupied just about every damn day. But outside of that, I'm just waiting for school to start in mid-August. I can just tell you that much.
I've got two myself. Is it more complicated replacing four starters on the offensive line or putting your camp schedule together for your kids?
The camp schedule 100%, because look, the thing about the offensive line is you work on that for years. You got guys in a pipeline. I mean, you got guys who are ready to go. Camp schedules, things fill up. They get their commitments really fast, and then sometimes you're just sitting on the outside looking in, and then you got kids who are just looking at you every single day. The Cheez-Its are running out of stock. I mean, I'm running out of pancakes. I'm running out of every damn thing. I don't know if they're eating healthy or not. Probably not. And so, nonetheless, I'm doing this show right now. I'm sure I'll go about to a bunch of Doritos on the couch. So, yeah, I think I'd much rather replace offensive linemen.
Honestly, from what I understand on putting the camp schedule together for for our kids, it's not all that different than a scholarship multi-year scholarship
it costs
chart.
about that much. If you think it is an NIL deal when you look at it, some of these things are about $500 a week. So it is somebody's NIL contract. I mean, it may not be a starter, but it's somebody at somebody's school.
And and as you said, the spots fill up quickly. You better get those kids in on like January, early enrollees, January, February into the camp schedule.
100%.
Special thanks to ML Rose, of course, for making this product free for all of you. 6 great locations in Middle Tennessee. Austin, near and dear to my heart. I went to middle school and high school there. I moved here to Nashville. So if you're coming into town, make sure you swing by ML Rose. All the best local craft beer you can get in Middle Tennessee is there. Specially curated taps. They got SEC happy hours on Saturdays and Sundays in the fall and the spring for basketball and for football. They got a bunch of huge baseball, SEC baseball contingent as well. So make sure you check them out. ML Rose, always great stuff there. I want to start with I'll get the Arch stuff out of the way just because it's just it is what it is. And I feel like the conversation is missing a particular narrative, and that is it feels like there is like this one side of the equation that he is as good as every Manning has ever been. The talent, the athleticism, it's been on display in a very short period of time. If you look at and I'm sure you guys all know this as Texas fans, but like he's the most efficient quarterback in Texas history with a quarterback over 50 passing attempts. Like he's yards per attempt and completion percentage and stuff. I know it's a very small sample size, but it's sort of adding to the legend, of course. And then there's this, why couldn't he start over Quinn Ewers? And I want to say, isn't there a third line of thinking, which is that he is this talented. He could be this good. He does unlock more things for the offense, but also maybe he just wasn't quite ready yet. Is that a fair line of thinking on this, or is that not fair?
I think it's totally fair. But I think you mentioned 3 things. There's layers to it, right? So let's start from the beginning, which is, after the 2023 season, the expectation and the hope inside the building was that Quinn Ewers was going to go pro. That's what everyone thought that would happen. I think the Ewers camp, they believed that was going to happen. And then it goes in front of the draft advisory committee, gets the feedback, and they basically say like, nah, you're not really ready. So at that point, he decides, okay, was going to come back for the 2024 season. That kind of throws a monkey wrench into what the plans were, because the plan was for Arch to come back. So at that point, Steve Sarkisian has to make a decision. First year in the SEC, do I just go with my veteran quarterback who just won me a Big 12 championship and got us to the semifinals, or do I now go and just say, no, we're good. We're just going to go with Arch. And then at that point, he made the decision that, you know what, I'm going to stick with my guy, have the conversation with Arch that says, hey, it's okay. We're going to need you to sit a little bit. We'll find a way to get you more active, which is we'll find some run packages for you. But we're going to do this. Now, the good part for Sarkisian is that at least at that point, he was talking to a kid and a family that understood football, understood the development of football, that could understand, hierarchies and things to that concern. It wasn't like some normal kid who's just like, well, wait a second, this is my turn. Right. So screw this, like I'm out. No, they're like, okay, We understand this is what happens in the quarterback universe. We'll wait one more year. We'll be okay. And it's all right. And so it wasn't like at that moment that Arch was so much clearly better than Quinn, where you just said to yourself, this should not even be a conversation. Again, he's coming off of getting to the semifinals with a loss against Washington, which Michael Penix pretty much just hits God mode and goes crazy in that game. If Michael Penix doesn't have an out-of-body experience, things could have been a little bit different for Texas. So they go into 2024 and say to themselves, all right, we're going to get Arch involved, but Quinn is going to be the guy. Now, Quinn doesn't end up having the year that you would say justifies that Arch Manning sits behind him, right? And if Quinn gets benched in that Georgia game, Arch comes in. I always contend that if Arch came in and lit up the world, then all of a sudden all bets would have been off.
Yeah.
Arch came in and he didn't do that much better than Quinn when it was all said and done. So you did, and again, he's thrown in the fire, right? Yeah, I understand, so when it's all said and done, they put Quinn back in, and then Sark just kind of doubles down on that's my guy. He almost wants to act like that thing never happened, and he rides the whole thing out. Now, what throws it off when it's all said and done is that, and I like to use when it's all said and done a lot, by the way. But what throws everything off is then Quinn goes into the draft and ends up being a 7th round pick. And at that point, you're like, what the hell was that all about? But, at the end of the day, he was still kind of maybe more of a bus driver for a program that was able to still get to the semifinals for 2 straight years. So I think once the Arch Manning thing conversation comes in, I think there's this expectation that Arch will be much better than what Quinn is. And, look, he's a little bit more versatile than what Quinn was. He's got more legs, he's got more speed, so he probably will be better than Quinn. I will always say that I think he'll be the number 1 draft pick when it's all said and done. Yep. I just want you to imagine a world. You've been in sports for a very long time. I just want you to imagine this world where you're the GM of whatever team it is. You can name it, whatever your favorite team is. I think you're a Tennessee guy, right?
I'm a Green Bay Packers fan, but I am a Tennessee guy.
Okay, so you're the GM of the Packers. You guys don't have a great season. You got the number 1 overall pick, and Green Bay is a little bit different because there's no ownership there. But at the end of the day, if it was a team that actually had an ownership group, who's going to be the GM that goes to the owner and says, "Look, I know that you're going to get a lot in merchandise sales if you draft this guy. I know you're going to get a lot more money in corporate sales if you draft this guy. I know that you can have season ticket sales go through the roof if you draft this guy. I know that there's going to be more television and we're going to have more television dates than we've ever had. I know you're going to be rich beyond your means, but hear me out. This left tackle that's from Ole Miss. I think he's really good. You're going to get fired. That will be your last day on the job. If you tell a billionaire that you have the opportunity to make more money, but hear me out.
But
hear
this safety,
real quick.
This safety from Ohio State's really good. Okay,
he's really good, and I understand that this Manning thing can be attached to us for the next 15 years, but no. So he'll be the number 1 overall pick when he comes out. Like I don't see that.
I'm not gonna lie, and this is not what I was expecting to talk about, but as a Green Bay Packers fan, I would trade Jordan Love for Arch Manning right now. I would do that. I mean, I like Jordan Love. I just don't think he's got. The point is, Arch Manning's pretty good, and you certainly, to your point, when you frame it that way, you cannot be the guy who passed on Arch Manning. You can't be the guy who passed on Arch Manning.
It would be like if Michael Jordan's sons actually were really, really, really good at basketball. To whatever you want to say about like LeBron James' son, he at least was a 2nd round pick. But this is like we're talking about literally the first family of sports when it's all said and done. So when we get to that portion of it, yeah. And I don't know what happened to Braden. But we'll just keep recording because he's got some technical difficulties. It looks like I'm taking over the show. I want to go to ML Rose because ML Rose, it looks like they've got a lot of cool stuff that's going on over there.
Wow, way to go, dude.
Yeah, I listen. I host my own show. Like I got you, baby. There's no awkward pauses here.
That's literally never.
I do shows 5 days a week. You're good.
That's literally never happened here. But I apologize. Thank you for being such a professional. I do appreciate that.
I got you. ML Rose. It sounds like the place to be to me. Hey, shout out to ML Rose. Whenever I go to Tennessee, I'm gonna go to all these damn games that they got over there, man. The best craft beers and everything.
There you go. All right, quickly, one note that I think of is Oklahoma last year. Yeah. Where they chose Jackson Arnold over Dylan Gabriel. And look what that is a huge, this is to your point what Sarkisian was thinking. Yeah. They Oklahoma, Brent Venables said, no, we got to give Jackson Arnold the keys. Dylan, you were great last year. You're maybe not maybe we have a little bit more upside with this guy. And then I don't think they were patient enough with him. They benched him and ended up, now he's at Auburn or whatever. But so I think there's some cautionary tales for sure around that delicate balance that he accomplished. And
if that's to your point though, if you're not 100% ready, if Oklahoma had to do it all over again, would they have just said, you know what, we're not going to run Dylan Gabriel out of town. We're just going to keep him here.
Yes.
And because you run him out of town, and one of two things will either be true. Either you failed to develop Jackson Arnold. Jackson Arnold wasn't that good. Either way, there's an oversight because you went with him and you ran your starting quarterback out of town. I think that's the thing when you talk about as relates to Sark is, you got to give him a little bit of benefit of the doubt as a guy who has a history of developing quarterbacks and saying, okay, listen, there's something to be said. And this is the thing as relates to Manning. And I kind of hopped in there, but the thing is that when I expressed it, so when Arch committed to Texas, the thing that was expressed to me was the Mannings felt like we've got 5 years. We got 5 years, and so there's no particular hurry to get to the finish line. There's a belief that there needs to be at least 30 starts in college football before you're NFL ready as a quarterback. He's got 2, right? And so there's not going to be this rush listen, if all hell breaks loose and he's in New York in December, Texas is undefeated, right? The New Orleans Saints have the number 1 pick overall, right? Yeah, I mean, then sure, maybe he just says I'm one and done, right? Like I'm good as far as that goes, but that's not a guy you're going to see rush to the finish line because they also understand, and this is the other thing that's been communicated to me, and you'll definitely appreciate what I'm about to say here, is that they also believe that the NFL can wait because this will be the most fun that he ever has as a quarterback. Because once he gets there, ask Eli how much fun it was those first couple of years in New York. Ask Peyton how much fun it was when he was throwing interceptions and breaking interception records in Indianapolis. Ask the dad, the grandfather, how much fun it was. Like they know this is it. Young man. So what we want to let you know what we've learned from our experience. Yeah. Our experience is take your time, develop, get NFL ready, but go enjoy Austin. You've been there. Enjoy Austin. Enjoy that time. This will be waiting for you. You've got money. Yeah. We ain't desolate. You don't need a GoFundMe for the Manning family. So, but go and enjoy yourself and get NFL ready. It's the reason why they went to Sark, and it's the reason why they've been so patient.
Yeah, it's such a smart, but to your point, they have the ability to be smart about this, and they have the experience and they have the resources to do it. But it's the right way to do it. And I do wonder if they kind of viewed last year intentionally as a potential, that was supposed to be 14 to 16 starts. And so I wonder if they view this upcoming year as the other 14 to 16, and maybe that's what happens. I do think Quinn Ewers' legacy for Texas, there's a ton of quarterbacks like him in college football that are the transitionary quarterback, the Greg McElroy or the Hendon Hooker or the guy, Taj Boyd was that guy for Clemson. There's so many great quarterbacks who aren't the elite 5-star guy. Yeah. Chris Leak is another one of those guys that are really good. They're just not the best. And then the best guy comes in and takes the program to another level. That's a very normal thing. And I think those careers actually age very well. I think Ewers' career will age very well over time when we look back and go, oh, conference championship and 2 semifinals and a lot of records. And, he's not Vince Young, but he's not Colt McCoy, but he's one of the 5 best quarterbacks probably in terms of production and and success. So, all right, I want to talk the rest of the roster though, because
Sure.
we at Athlon, we have Texas ranked number 1. They're probably going to be number 1 by a lot of people, ballpark, give or take a few spots. The build up to this year, because of progress in each of the last 2, and I would say it's progress because of the schedule going through the SEC versus, conference championship semifinal, SEC semifinal. I think there is a step there. Sark has done this every year he's been there, but you lose 4 guys on the offensive line. He was great replacing Murphy and Sweat from 2 years ago on the defensive line. I cover the Titans here locally. Tavondre Sweat was literally a monster.
Yes.
So I'm just curious, roster-wise, where is this group sort of, let's say top 50? I don't need 1 to 85, but like top 50, where is this group relative to, let's say, the last 2 Texas rosters?
I mean, they're going to be, they'll probably be just as good as last year, potentially be better. They definitely have the potential to be a little bit better on defense, which is saying a lot because they were pretty damn good on defense. The thing that Sark has learned, and I'll answer this question in a roundabout way, but the thing that he learned from Nick Saban is the importance of stacking talent. And the one thing that Saban was able to do extremely, extremely well is they just stacked the rooms. And maybe if you have attrition through the NFL draft, oh my God, Alabama had 8 guys drafted, 10 guys drafted, and then they just have this next wave of guys who have come in. You've seen Texas over the last 2 years have double digits as far as the draft is concerned. And, you had one season, you said to yourself, oh, wow, they lost a bunch of guys until you mentioned. And then they come in this past year and, they had Vernon Broughton, who was a defensive tackle. He gets drafted. They get both of the defensive tackles end up getting drafted. And so I think from a talent standpoint, you're just seeing wave after wave after wave. They're recruiting well. They finished with the number 1 recruiting class as well, but they also are selective in what they go about as far as the transfer portal is concerned. And so what you're seeing, and they also have some really, really good coaches. But, if you start on the defensive side of the ball, you take your choice between either talking about Colin Simmons on the edge or Anthony Hill as the middle linebacker. I've seen people have Anthony Hill as the linebacker, former 5-star, listed as the number 1 linebacker that would come out in this in a future draft. Colin Simmons, former 5-star. He's a guy that's viewed as one of the best, potentially one of the best edge rushers that are out there. And so, you may, and they've got a guy, they lose Jahdae Barron, who ends up being the best defensive back in all the country last year. But they've got a guy replacing him by the name of Jalen Gilbo, who about 2 seasons ago was actually beating out Jahdae Barron for the position, and then he gets hurt. And so he's a guy that's come back, and they say to themselves, like, he's going to be top notch. And so, you're going to have guys that you haven't heard of, but from a defensive perspective, you've got to trade more at the linebacker position as well. And, and a guy that, probably needs to be talked about more, but Michael Taft from the safety position. I can say this. You can't. I'm allowed to say this. Michael Taft.
I know where you're going.
He's a white safety in the SEC. And so because he's a white safety in the SEC, he doesn't always get the credit that he deserves. But I am telling you, he's an absolute baller. He's just an absolute baller. He's one of the best safeties in the country. He's a guy that I feel like is going to get drafted at some point. He's going to hear his name called. And he's a guy that is not only a hard hitter, he's former walk-on, but he doesn't play like it because he's on a scholarship. I mean, I think he's got a high price card, just like all these other kids rolling around Texas as well. I think he's got a Lambo himself, and I mean, and he himself is one of the anchors of this defense. And so, from a defensive point of view, and you got Pete Kwiatkowski as the defensive coordinator, they've just got talent talent. They're oozing with talent. This is before I even get into, a Justice Terry, who's a former 5-star out of Georgia that they recruited that's expected to come in and contribute in the defensive spot. So or Lance Johnson, who's another defensive guy, former 5-star. Like I just keep going down the list of 5-stars that I'm talking about. They're stacked on the defensive side. They're going to be just as salty this year as they were last year. But yeah, shout out to Michael.
Does Taff how many draft scouting reports are you going to read on Taff that do not mention Blake Gideon?
It's like every black quarterback is like, he reminds me of Cam Newton. Like, does he? Does he? Like, we always do this thing in sports. And so many people are guilty of it. It's like, every white running back will be compared to McCaffrey, right?
Everyone's why am I thinking Cooper Rush?
The
quarterback
from remember the slot
Cooper Kupp. Everyone's Cooper Kupp, Julian Edelman. It's every one of them.
Yes. But it just is happening. And by the way, everyone, y'all, this is sports. Take it lightly. No one get offended. Like, it just is what it is, right? So,
you've offended my delicate white sensibilities, Anwar.
Which is funny. Me being the black guy defending the white guy. Like,
hey, 2025.
I mean, somebody be like, man, I like this guy.
It's 2025. Come on, reverse racism is a bigger problem. You know that, right? Anyway, now I'm trying to offend people that
yeah. Don't go too far down the road, man.
Look,
I not get canceled.
Snowflakes don't listen to this show. Okay. That's not, people don't listen to this show for that crap. They listen to this show for like ball. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
By the way, Blake Gideon, really good defensive coordinator I think Georgia Tech's going to be really good this year. So just keep an eye on that.
I mean,
total side note.
And that's the other thing was Sark too, though. He's lost Blake Gideon, he's lost Tashard Choice. Like, he's lost guys throughout the years. But again, sitting there under Saban and learning that, okay, I'm going to lose certain guys and we're just going to replace them with really good coaches. The good part for him, I saw a stat that said, and don't quote me 100% on this, but might be one of the only staffs that's had the same, I think it might be the only staff that's had the same coordinators in place for going into 5 seasons. Offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, and special teams coordinator. I saw someone say something like that. If they're not the only one, they're one of the only ones that's had them for going into 5 years.
I mean, I thought you were going to say like 2 years.
Yeah,
because it's hard. Because it's hard to think, and especially in the SEC, they've had massive turnover at the coordinator position the last 3 seasons. So I'll have to double check that, but I think that's a really good observation. I think I don't know if there's a clear-cut answer to this, but the culture thing, we had an anonymous scouting report in the magazine going into last season, or going into 2 seasons ago, actually, which was talking about how, like, you could see the dysfunction and the problems with the culture at A&M. And it was one of the things that I just remember working on, thinking, like, these 2 scouting reports of Texas and Texas A&M are so polar opposite, but, like, the dysfunction was visible on the sideline watching Texas A&M games from other coaches in the conference. And then they pay $70 million to get rid of Jimbo. And the report on Texas was finally the noise had been removed and eliminated around the program at Texas, and that Sarkisian had figured out a way to sort of get everybody in line. Now, I think a lot of that has to do with Kevin Elteef and some of the power structure above the university. But how big of an undertaking was that in terms of the success today for the program writ large? Is kind of cleaning, I don't know what to say, like, clean the noise out, know what a signal is, know what the noise is, and kind of clean. Culture is always an overused word. I'm trying not to use that word.
Yeah.
Like, what did Sark do to get everybody sort of in line?
Sark did a lot of good things. First thing I would say is that, and I've pointed this out before, and I have a huge respect for him. When Sark came in, to this day, he's never said anything bad about the previous staff. Not one bad thing. And typically, when coaches take over, all they do is crap on the previous staff and the players that they recruited, and basically almost to distance themselves and be like, hey, that's their mess, even though I inherited it, right? But that's their mess. So 1, he never did that. 2, he took on the guys that Tom Herman left him as if they were his own, as if he recruited them. So he never made it into Sark's guys versus Herman's guys, right? Like, I recruited you, but he didn't, no. He's like, I'm embracing you guys, the Bijan Robinsons, the Roshan Johnsons of the world, to Vondre Smith, all the guys that you mentioned, from even in the draft, the Byron Murphys, those were guys that Tom Herman recruited. But he went ahead and embraced those guys, and he had them be a part of the family. I think he had he created a culture of transparency. He's an NFL guy, and NFL is really kind of white and black, right? It just, hey, you're good, hey, you're not.
Yeah.
There's no BS associated with it. And so there's that. And then there's another thing that he did that is a little bit different, is that because of what Sark has been through in his life, and that's well documented, right? So we don't have to go through the whole thing. There's a transparency, and he feels like the more you get to know each other, the more you fight for your brother. And so he instituted this thing called Culture Wednesdays.
What an amazing concept.
Yeah, so he introduced this thing called Culture Wednesdays that he's been doing for the past several years. And Culture Wednesdays, it basically is almost like a fireside chat where you and I talk, and I'll talk to you about my mom and the things that she's gone through. Yep. I'll talk to you about my neighborhood, right? And it's almost like a counseling session for the guys. But the more you get to know about the person, good or bad, the struggles that they've been through, then the more you get to identify with them. You don't see them as a teammate, you see them as a brother. And so the Culture Wednesdays, it ends up being a thing. They do that, every week. They do that during the seasons, and not as much in the season, but a lot during the off season. So they do a lot of this team building, transparency. Let's get to know each other, fireside chats. And I think that has a lot to do with why guys get along, why you don't really see arguments on the sidelines, why you don't hear about bickering. Well, to be quite honest with you, when you look at guys who from Texas that goes into the transfer portal, you don't see that Texas losing guys that they want. Like, you see guys who are on the lower end of the roster, but you don't necessarily see the elite starter or whatever go into the portal. And it's just because, Sark has created a place where guys feel comfortable, where there's transparency. Look, you could get rewarded in NIL. That's not a trade secret by any stretch of the imagination. And so it ends up being, I think that ends up being the thing where there's honesty, there's transparency. Sark is really down to earth with the guys. He doesn't try to pretend to be something that he's not. Now, you're not going to see him like dancing in the locker room and trying to be cool. He just is really cool and down to earth. And I think that helps them a lot.
I find it really interesting because I think that's a huge part of it. I find it interesting you didn't talk much about, because the other side of that is you need the institution to be on board with all of that. You need now you need a collective, you need the legal department, you need a general manager, you need so many different things to all sort of buy into that as well. And I feel like, and just having lived there, I was there for the Priest Holmes, Ricky Williams days, and those are some extraordinary talented teams, and like didn't win a lot of games. And then Mac Brown kind of figured it out. Like, they got some extraordinary talent, some classes there that led to championship, a national championship, and another appearance. What I find interesting is that Texas still has the biggest and best infrastructure of any school probably in the country. And it always felt like they hadn't figured out how to maximize that the way Nick Saban in Alabama sort of like got everybody in line to some degree above him rather than below him. And you just talked a lot about how the good work Sark did sort of quote unquote below him in the organization. Is it fair to just say there was too many, is the old phrase like too many cooks in the kitchen, got everybody to shut up and get in line kind of deal? I mean, I know that's again a little cliche, but is that really the gist of what happened above Sarkisian?
That's a few things. I mean, one, getting Chris Del Conte as the athletic director definitely helped everything. Because first of all, to get everyone in unison and get everyone going, you mentioned Kevin Eltype as well, and Kevin Eltype deserves a lot of credit as well. But Chris Del Conte ends up being a guy that, look, they've won back-to-back Directors Cups. So, Texas overall in all sports is doing incredibly well. But they hired a coach who had a vision, and everyone's been able to get behind the vision. And then, look, if winning helps, I think, look, if Tom Herman would have won to the degree that everyone would have been happy with, people probably would have been okay with it, right? But winning helps, a lot. I do it, but it's when you say too many chefs in the kitchen, to a certain degree, you are correct, right? Because you used to hear about all the boosters showing up for practices, and everyone's got their opinion about who these things are and what these guys are. But at this point, Sark still opens up his practices. Sark still has practices where the boosters are involved, and Sark has never shunned them away. But those people aren't necessarily trying to run the program. They used to call them a bunch of little Jerry Joneses down here at Texas. Like, everybody wants to be the next Jerry Jones. But I think everyone is just bought in to the vision that Sark has. And look, right nowadays, you need those guys that donating to the collectives, to the NIL, like that. That's your contribution there. Like, you can go do that. And you can have your company who brings in such and such person and has their appearance. So, it's almost like that kind of is washed away. That's kind of taken care of itself. Now you can hire, your analysts to be coaches. So you go out to a practice, and you don't know who the hell is the assistant coach and who the hell is the damn analyst, because there's so many people on the damn field. So I think all that's taken care of itself. As far as the infrastructure is concerned, I think Sark's vision, I think L-Type and Delcani working in unison, and then the wins that are a byproduct of that. Making sure it's easy to get some donations when you win, and when that helps.
Well, you've been very patient. Everybody go to orangebloods.com. Of course, make sure you check out ML Rose if you're in Nashville. So last one here, and I'm just curious because it feels like an old school college football build where you kind of build in the trajectory of getting closer and closer to a championship. Obviously, a lot of expectations this year. What happens if this team is still really, really good and they either lose in the national championship game, or they lose in the semifinal, or they get to the SEC championship game again and they happen to lose that game, which I frankly don't think is as big of a deal anymore? No. What happens if they don't win a national championship? How do the fans, which again is extremely difficult, what do the fans, how are they handling, let's say, a third straight semifinal appearance? How do they react to that?
I think at that point, maybe there becomes a little bit of impatience that would probably naturally occur, a little bit of impatience, not much, but a little bit. I think there's still a hey, we're doing this in the SEC kind of thing. This will be year 2 in the SEC kind of, arch. There'll be way. I think, honestly, I don't think that would be the major reaction. I think 9-3 and missing the playoffs, I think that becomes the thing. Because here's the thing we didn't talk about, but we just had the conversation real quick before we go, is that, yes, I think everybody's projecting Texas to be that, the number one team. Everyone has got the scenarios on why they should be, semifinals or even win a national championship. What they don't talk about, though, is, 9-3 and 11-1, like, you can put both of those on the table. And I can make an argument, you can make an argument for 9-2. You can make an argument that Texas is going on the road versus Georgia. Texas is going on the road versus, Florida. Texas, you still have Oklahoma. You have Ohio State to start off the season, right? As I mentioned, Oklahoma's a rivalry game. You still have Texas A&M at the end of the year, right? So there are potential losses. Like, to say that you don't go on the road versus the defending national champions at Ohio State, and that's not a potential loss, is silly, right? It's just to ignore that. I don't care where Oklahoma is as a program right now. We know it's a rivalry game, and we know crazy things happen in rivalry games. I see Charlie Strong win versus Baker Mayfield versus Oklahoma. Like, things happen.
Was that a 5-7? Was that a 5-7 Texas team?
Yes, it was.
I feel like
there was a few of them. There's 2 out of 3 under Charlie, right? But that happened. You got to go to the swamp, and and everyone expects DJ to look really good, this season, right? And now we haven't even accounted for knocking on wood what may happen from injury standpoint. So so that to me, I know everyone's putting 11-1 and checking the box, and I'm just saying, you can do that, but also understand that there's some other things. So I think the bigger reaction would be if Texas doesn't make the playoffs for some reason. I think that would be more of the huge disappointment. Get into the semifinals. I think people say, okay, but Sark's under contract to like 2030, 2031, something like that. So that's not going to change, and no one's going to be too upset with that.
Well, and there's more than one path now. You could go 10-2 in the regular season, and your only losses be to like number 1 Ohio State and number 2 Georgia, and then lose in the SEC championship game and get a third loss, still make the playoff, and then win the whole thing.
100%, right?
It's a totally new. You can go there. You can get there totally different ways now. So
yes, 100%. But there was, but the hope would be that Arch doesn't have them in, life or death games versus Vanderbilt, right? So things like that is the hope that to bring it all back to where Arch has this team in a little bit better of a place.
You can Diego Pavia. You cannot kill him. Okay, you can't kill him. He's like a roach. You can't kill him.
He'll be back next year.
Be careful. Be careful what you say about Diego Pavia.
He'll find a reason to be back next year. It's like, you know what? I'm going to go to JUCO and get another year of eligibility, and then they're going to transfer him. Like, you can't stop a JUCO player going for his 9th year. Like, he's going to do that for the rest of his life. Props to him. Probably the most he's going to get paid. So I at him.
You can't run a 5'8" player 192 times in the SEC. That's just my opinion. Anwar, thank you so much, dude. You're great. It's a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for joining. And next time you and the family are in Nashville, ML Rose on me. I got you, man. So thank you. Thank you so much.